there have been moments when we actually thought about splitting up, but I think we're very lucky in a way to have a good fan base, people who actually follow our music and expect us to do something different, and genuinely wait for our next release to see what it's going to be like rather than knowing what it's going to be like. So I think it's a combination of that and the fact that we know each other really well now. You know, I mean, we know how much each person can take, and you know when to leave someone alone and give them their own space and things. So it's a combination of those two things, I think.
That's the thing, you spend so much time together. It's like being with your family, and there's going to be days when all your family get on really well, and there's going to be some days when you argue, but it doesn't, you know, it's just the ups and downs of, you know, spending a lot of time with people, you know. But I think, like Greg said, we all know each other so well. You know, we know when to sort of, when we can joke with people and when just, you know, people are miserable and to leave them alone. You know, you kind of get used to that after being together so long. People always want to put you into some kind of category, but at the end of the day, there's only two categories. It's either a good song or it's a bad song. And they're the only categories that I'm bothered about. You know, I don't care if we're black metal, doom metal, goth metal. It doesn't really bother me about categories. It's just good or bad. I think some journalists have just tried to label us as being miserable because we write quite melancholic kind of music, you know, but it's, I mean, certain press people always want to label you with something, put you into a category or sort of stick you under some kind of label with you, you know, the way you are, but it's just lazy journalism really, you know. We're sort of happy with our lot really, so we're not as miserable as people probably think we are. We just write sort of melancholic music.
We never intended on changing styles or doing anything like that. We just take it like a record at a time, and you know, I mean, the next record might be completely different to the one we've just done, but who knows? I mean, we've kind of grown up doing it, so I just think it's part of growing older, really, you know. We definitely didn't start death metal because I was into that stuff well before we were around. But I think the term gothic metal did come out of our gothic album, but that's because I was into like gothic music and Nick, our singer, was into metal, and we just blended the two, and we never really gave it much thought. But then, like a few years down the line, lots of bands started copying that record, and all of a sudden there's this genre called gothic metal. The gothic metal scene that started after we put the gothic album out, it was only like a small amount of bands that came out of that, like Anathema and The Gathering, Moonspell, people like this. But in the last few years, yeah, there's been lots and lots, probably hundreds or maybe even thousands of these gothic metal bands coming out. And ultimately, it's like Lee said earlier, it's down to whether they're good or bad. If it's a bad gothic metal band, then I just think, oh God, why did we create this genre? But if it's a good gothic metal band, then fine, yeah, it makes me proud to be involved in it, you know.
I think for us to be accused of trying to be commercial, you know, we've basically always gone completely against the grain of what's fashionable at any given time. So I think we're one of the few bands that has not jumped on a bandwagon and tried to sound like something that's hip at a certain time. So that's something, like I said, we just write songs for us. We're not really interested in what's hip at the time or who's fashionable. You know, I'm not interested. They can do their thing. You know, we've always kind of gone along and just created our own niche and just sort of wavered around everybody else.
When we did the Host album, it was probably down to just being bored of doing the same thing over and over again. I think the worst thing in the music business is to be predictable, and we hate to be predictable. The Host album got great publicity, but yeah, I mean, some of the older fans didn't really get it. But I mean, for instance, when we came to do the new album, Symbol of Life, a lot of people thought that was going to be a really, really electronic album because we got a producer in called Reese Fulber who's worked with a lot of electronic acts. But when we saw on our chat board that people thought it was going to be really electronic, we thought we'd do something a lot more organic. So I think the whole point for us is just to be not to be predictable.
Well, I mean, people always want to hear, you know, quite an array of songs from our history, really. I mean, it's difficult to sort of play, when you've been around as long as we have for 15 years, it's very difficult when you put a set list together because obviously you have a new record out and you want to play as many new songs as you can so that people can sort of hear the new album. So we always do a spattering of old songs, but, you know, there's always going to be people that want, you know, to hear like the really early stuff. Spinning the turntable probably wouldn't make me sweat as much as playing drums does, so if I start getting lazy in my old age, then maybe I'll start using the turntable instead, who knows, you know.
I think it's highly unlikely. I mean, I just think it's not our thing, you know, so, and it never will be.